Chapter 5, Social Distancing. The 6 feet rule was arbitrary in and of itself, my emphasis. Nobody knows where it came from. Most people assume that 6 feet of distance, the recommendation for keeping 6 feet apart, comes out of some old studies related to flu, where droplets don't travel more than 6 feet. We know COVID spreads through aerosols. We've known that for a while, so how operative is that? The 6 feet rule is a perfect example of the lack of rigor around how the CDC made recommendations, my emphasis. Scott Gottlieb, former commissioner of the Food and Drug Administration, now Pfizer board member, September 20211. Interviewer, does this study suggest to you that 3 feet distancing is good enough? Fauci, it does, indeed. And that's exactly the point I'm making. What the CDC wants to do is, they want to accumulate data. And when the data shows that there is an ability to be 3 feet, they will act accordingly. And I can assure you, within a reasonable period of time, quite reasonable, they will be giving guidelines according to the data they have. It won't be very long, I promise you, my emphasis. Anthony Fauci, March 12, 20212. Stay 6 feet away from others. Inside your home, avoid close contact with people who are sick. If possible, maintain 6 feet between the person who is sick and other household members. Outside your home, put 6 feet of distance between yourself and people who don't live in your household. CDC guidance as of April 20223. Social distancing is an absurd term based on outdated science, recommended by today's charlatan public health organizations for no reason other than to promote fear. According to study finds, 6 feet separation was originally proposed in 1897 by a German bacteriologist named Karl Flügge. 4 however, a 2020 report by Jones et al. In the BMJ argues that the practice is part of oversimplified, overly rigid, and outdated science, which does not take aerosols into account. 5 According to institutions like these, a sneeze can send aerosols as far as 26 feet inside a room, and heavy breathing can lead to rooms filled with such aerosols. The shocking thing here is that, while Anthony Fauci admits to this day he never had any scientific justification to recommend 6 feet versus say, 3 feet, the report in the BMJ actually suggests greater than 6 feet would be ideal, depending on the situation. The problem with this suggestion is how obviously impractical it is, making the entire venture of expanding the normal, cover your sneeze, best practices both pointless and reckless. For example, the BMJ report specifically mentions settings like gyms as high risk, since they are indoors and involve heavy breathing. If the recommendations of this report were followed, people would separate more than 6 feet in gyms for this reason. What this ultimately means, however, is that fewer people would need to be permitted in gyms at any given time, or they'd have to be shut down entirely, which we know they were. Such actions were completely counterintuitive and unfathomable for a public health organization to have encouraged during a pandemic for 2 glaring reasons. The CDC admits about 94.9% of those hospitalized had at least one underlying medical condition. 6 Specifically, the CDC even goes on to say that obesity, diabetes with complication, anxiety disorders, and the total number of conditions were the strongest risk factors for severe COVID-19 illness. One would think based on this assertion that the primary goal of the CDC would therefore have been to get every citizen in a gym daily. Instead, the opposite was done, as gyms were closed and or people were scared away from them due to the presence of other human beings. Despite the claims of the BMJ report, the reality is that over the past year, and a half epidemiological studies have shown a lack of any statistically significant link between open gyms and COVID cases. Specifically, a University of Oregon study found that no outbreaks could be traced to gyms, despite 8.5 million ins by gym patrons in the state over a 32-week period. 7. Taking these two things together, there are only 3 reasonable conclusions which can be drawn on the imposition of social distancing and what it reveals about the alleged pandemic itself, assuming inhalation of or infection with the alleged SARS-CoV-2 virus is the cause of the disease COVID-19. The CDC/BMJ transmission theories posited about aerosols, droplets, and distancing benefits are highly debatable and are not supported in the real world. This because healthy people in gyms exposed to those aerosols frequently were not at risk. Assuming the CDC/BMJ aerosol transmission theories of the SARS-CoV-2 virus are true, the assumption that this virus causes the disease COVID-19 is a bad one. This is due to there being no statistically significant link between actually being diseased and frequenting high transmission likelihood venues, along with the significant link between the disease and pre-existing conditions. Both the transmission and cause of disease assumptions are bad because they are themselves based on bad assumptions and don't reflect the discernible reality of the situation. More on this later. Unfortunately, the lack of outbreaks during ongoing large and indoor allegedly high-risk events has not led to a society-wide change of course away from these senseless recommendations and/or enforcements. In fact, governments, with the support of their public health organizations, have gone to absurd lengths to punish any lack of compliance. The owners of the Adalis Gym of Belmar, New Jersey, for example, have been arrested, visited by police, and hit with over $1 million in fines for not following the governor's closure requirements. 8. In fact, in the name of health, the state even took the cruel and unusual step of boarding up and padlocking the gym, only for the owners to have to break into their own facility. And despite all of that, despite overcoming those inhumane coercions and hosting tens of thousands of patrons anyway, the state of New Jersey, without apology or any sense of irony, failed to link even a single case to the gym. As we've seen in all previous chapters to this point, this type of unjust behavior in the name of public health has not even remotely been an isolated incident. It has been ubiquitous thanks to the centralization we pointed to, and has led to a dangerous dysfunction in society. For one thing, many if not most stores still have their social distance floor markers and cash register shield walls, to the undeniable detriment of human interaction. And human interaction is, like exercise as mentioned above, also a crucial thing to maintain for the benefit of human health. Mercury Care Business Health Solutions, a health services and employee assistance program provider, highlights some key points on the importance of social interaction. 9. Benefits of socialization: improved mental health care, reduced risk of dementia, improved brain health, promotes sense of safety, belonging, allows people to confide in one another. Physical, in-person connections are important for mental and physical health, as online interaction, see increased use and encouragement of platforms like Zoom during the COVID era, provides a false sense of connectedness. Further, on the note of mental health, a classic sociological study, L.E. Suicide, by Emile Durkheim found that the primary factor in suicide is a lack of social integration. 10. We have already quantified the increase in suicide numbers in Chapter 2, but this provides further support for the responsibility of public health organizations for that increase. In each of the 4 types of suicide, Durkheim defines how promoting the view that other human beings are diseased and to be avoided by more than the average body length is cruel and reckless. Anomic suicide description, caused by a sense of disconnect from society and a feeling of not belonging resulting from weakened social cohesion. Relevance in the COVID era, especially applicable in the context of children whose schools were shut down and who were told to distance from friends at the most crucial ages for social development. Altruistic suicide description, result of excessive regulation of individuals by societal forces such that the person may be moved to kill themselves for the benefit of a cause or for society at large. Relevance in the COVID era, the idea that human beings are a threat to others and the use of collective phraseology ubiquitous during the COVID pandemic. Egoistic suicide description, occurs when people feel totally detached from the work, family, community, and other social ties in society. Elderly are susceptible. Relevance in the COVID era, a 2020 study by Sepulveda, Loyola et al. In the Journal of Nutrition, Health and Aging on the Impact of COVID-19 Social isolation on the health of older people found mental and physical health were negatively affected during social distancing. 11 outcomes included anxiety, depression, poor sleep quality, and physical inactivity, which all contribute to poor physical health and disease. Fatalistic suicide description occurs under conditions of extreme social regulation resulting in oppressive conditions and a denial of the self and of agency. Relevance in the COVID era, lockdowns, mask mandates, business closures, church closures, vaccine mandates, denial of religious exemptions, denial of basic human rights, censorship, fact-checking, and seemingly every other action taken/encouraged by public health organizations throughout the pandemic. There has been an absurd amount of hypocrisy in the actions of public health organizations and their political proponents related to each and every action recommended/ordered/mandated. Whether it be Nancy Pelosi's spa day, Gavin Newsom's dinner party, Austin Mayor Steve Adler's recommendation to not travel broadcasted from a resort in Mexico, Lori Lightfoot's makeover, or an endless list of other disingenuous offenses, it has been perfectly clear, the science applies to the, and not to me. 12. That said, public health experts are not meant to be a political body. In fact, that they are not political has been their primary, incessant appeal when they beg people to trust them, despite the overwhelming destruction their actions have caused with no conceivable or demonstrated benefit whatsoever. Yet one particular set of actions related to social distancing demonstrated that political is all many of them are, at the expense of any scientific credibility they desperately wanted and tried coercing people into believing they had. The hypocrisy to which I am referring is the public health reaction to race protests in the summer of 2020. Per a report by Politico, here are just a few actual, mind-boggling quotes from credentialed, public health experts, on the topic. 13, Jennifer Nuzzo, Johns Hopkins epidemiologist, we should always evaluate the risks and benefits, my emphasis, of efforts to control the virus. In this moment the public health risks of not protesting to demand an end to systemic racism, my emphasis, greatly exceed the harms of the virus. Abrar Karen, Brigham and Women's Hospital physician, the injustice that's evident to everyone right now needs to be addressed. While I have voiced concerns that protests risk creating more outbreaks, the status quo wasn't going to stop #COVID-19 either, my emphasis. Tom Frieden, former CDC director and convicted sexual abuser, loudly warned against efforts to rush reopening but is now supportive of mass protests. 14. Jeffrey Flyer, former dean of Harvard Medical School, it makes it clear that all along there were trade-offs between details of lockdowns and social distancing and other factors that the experts previously discounted and have now decided to reconsider and rebalance. Hundreds of public health workers in an open letter, protests against stay-at-home orders not only oppose public health interventions, but are also rooted in white nationalism and run contrary to respect for black lives. Protests against systemic racism, which fosters the disproportionate burden of COVID-19 on black communities and also perpetuates police violence, must be supported. Staying at home, social distancing, and public masking are effective at minimizing the spread of COVID-19. However, as public health advocates, we do not condemn these gatherings as risky for COVID-19 transmission, my emphasis. Rochelle Walensky, CDC Director, 2021 Official Statement. 15, the pandemic illuminated inequities that have existed for generations and revealed for all of America a known, but often unaddressed, epidemic impacting public health, racism. What we all know is this, my emphasis, racism is a serious public health threat that directly affects the well-being of millions of Americans. There isn't much commentary I should have to provide on the absurdity of these statements. For American citizens to be mandated or coerced into doing anything by people who say things this foolish is simply wrong and to be utterly dismissed. There's no other way to say it. These are not scientists. In fact, the CDC director making statements like this should be outright disqualifying, if our goal for the CDC is to control diseases. And to see the evil in these statements, your opinion on racism in America doesn't even matter. If you oppose mandates and distancing and want to protest about it, then these public health experts are lying, raging political hypocrites. On the other hand, if you do think racism is an epidemic and want to protest about it, then these public health experts encouraged you to engage in an activity they believed would cause you to catch a dangerous, life-threatening, extremely infectious disease that a week before was worth shutting the world down for and abusing anyone who disagreed. No matter where you fall, there is no compassion, logic, or science to be found in any of the above quotes, and that is a tremendous problem when these are the people whose directives politicians followed to the detriment of billions worldwide. The truth of the matter here is this: I'm not even denying that outcomes for minorities in the COVID era were worse. In many cases they were. But in their support for the COVID narrative and the experimentation which underpinned it, many of the very public health officials virtue signaling about race were directly facilitating and/or inflicting those very outcomes. In some cases they were even alleged by first-hand whistleblowers as having done so knowingly, the primary account attestations of which I will provide throughout this book. To close out this chapter, Webster's defines the word oxymoron as a combination of contradictory or incongruous words. 16. We will get more to the psychological implications of public health organizations using this kind of doublespeak in a later chapter. But the bottom line is, distancing is not social. In fact, distancing is the opposite of social. To use such terminology for what, in their own words, is an arbitrary practice, is both condescending and irresponsible. It's even more so when the people spreading it are shown to not actually believe in or follow their own edicts. And while some might try to pass off the phrasing of social distancing as a morale-boosting tool, it is impossible to square the good intent this alleges with the passive, aggressive, damaging actions demonstrated to this point by those who have used it. Endnotes. Tillison, Tom. 2021. Former head of FDA says 6 feet distancing rule was arbitrary, nobody knows where it came from. BizPac Review. https://www.bizpacrieview.com/2021/09/20/former head of FDA says 6-foot distancing rule was arbitrary, nobody knows where it came from. 113-7013/. Jones, Susan. 2021. Dr. Fauci now believes 3 feet of social distancing may be enough. cnsnews.com. https://cnsnews.com/index.php/article/national/Susan, Jones/Dr. Fauci, now, believes, 3 feet, social distancing, may be enough. COVID-19 and Your Health. 2022. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. https://www.cdc.gov/coronavirus/2019, gov/prevent, getting, 6/prevention.html. Sleazer, Brianna. 2020. Social distancing 6 feet apart is based on outdated science, scientists say. Study finds https://www.studyfinds.org/social, distancing, 6 feet, apart, outdated, science/ Jones, Nicholas R., Shinyu Qureshi, Robert J. Temple, Jessica P. J. Larwood, Trisha Greenhalgh, and Lydia Buraiba. 2020. 2 meters or 1, what is the evidence for physical distancing in COVID-19? BMJ, M3223. doi, 10.1136/bmj.m3223. Kompany Yetz, Lyudmila, Audrey F. Pennington, Allison B. Goodman, Hannah G. Rosenblum, Brooke Belay, Jean Y. K.O., and Jennifer R. Shevinsky et al. 2021. Underlying medical conditions and severe illness among 540,667 adults hospitalized with COVID-19, March 2020 to March 2021. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. https://www.cdc.gov/pcd/issues/2021/21_0123. HTM. Golden, C. Douglas. 2020. Colorado study finds no statistically significant link between gyms and COVID cases. The Western Journal. https://www.westernjournal.com/study, finds, no, statistically, significant, link, gyms, COVID, cases/ IBID. Health benefits of social interaction, Mercy Medical Center. 2022. mercycare.org. Accessed March 2nd. https://www.mercycare.org/bhs/employee, assistance, program/EAP for employers/resources/health, benefits, of, social, interaction/. Crossman, Ashley. 2020. Learn about Émile Durkheim's classic study of suicide in sociology. ThoughtCo. https://www.thoughtco.com/study, of, suicide, by, Émile Durkheim, 302-6758. Sepulveda, Loyola, W. I. Rodriguez, Sanchez, P. Perez, Rodriguez, F. Gans, R. Torralba, D. V. Oliveira, and Leocadio Rodriguez, Manas. 2020. Impact of social isolation due to COVID-19 on health in older people, mental and physical effects and recommendations. The Journal of Nutrition, Health and Aging 24, 938-947. doi, 10.1007/S12603, 020, 1500-7. Data visualization COVID hypocrisy, policymakers breaking their own rules. The Heritage Foundation. 2022. Data visualizations. The Heritage Foundation. https://www.heritage.org/data, visualization/public, health/COVID, hypocrisy, policymakers, breaking, their, own, rules/ Diamond, Dan. 2020. Suddenly, public health officials say social justice matters more than social distance. Politico. https://www.politico.com/news/magazine/2020/06/04/public, health, protests, 301,534. Kariga, Christina. 2019. Former CDC Director Tom Frieden pleads guilty in sex abuse case, gets no jail time. ABC News. https://abcnews.go.com/us/cdc, Director, pleads, guilty, groping, family, friend, jail/story. ID equals 634780002. Walensky, Rochelle P. 2021. Media statement from CDC Director Rochelle P. Walensky, MD, MPH, on racism and health. CDC. https://www.cdc.gov/ media/releases/2021/S0408, racism, health.html. Oxymoron definition and meaning. 2022. Merriam-Webster.com. Accessed March 2nd. https://www.merriam-webster.com/dictionary/oxymoron.